Okay, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Welcome back to Saturday night halaqah. Before I start, I want to remind everybody that we'd like to have about 20 minutes of an actual talk, so please do not interrupt. You'll get plenty of time to ask questions later, so you don't even try raising your hand because I'm not gonna honor your request. You're gonna have to wait until I'm done from that first section, that first segment, if you will. So about 20 minutes or so, no interruption, no questions. And then inshallah you get all the time to ask any question you like. Related to the topic or not related to the topic, it's all okay. So I ask that you be patient and attempt to focus and try and understand and get something out of the halaqah, something beneficial, inshallah. Tonight's topic is a question, and this was actually by popular demand. People requested that topic. Not my fault. Are we alone in this universe? Yep. So is there any life outside of Earth? Is there any evidence? Because again, here it's not necessarily a scientific halaqah, or it's not a halaqah about science necessarily. However, there's obviously we believe in Islam, there's no contradiction, there's no conflict between science and religion. This is one reason I want to address this topic. Because some people in their mind, there's a perceived conflict or clash between religion and science. But in Islam, we believe that both are from God, both are from Allah. Quran was revealed from Allah, so it is you could say it is the spoken word of God and the written word of God, but also the universe is created by God. So there should not be any conflict, there should not be any contradiction, and this is really the premise, this is really the foundation upon which we Muslims operate. So this is, the question. Is there any life outside of Earth? Obviously, this is a question that science itself has tried to answer. And maybe since the 1960s, there are very serious attempts to discover or to maybe send some radio waves in the universe and see if there's any response. So there has been lots of attempts. So far, we're not aware of any credible responses. Of course, people will claim that they've had some interactions with aliens, and many people claim, in fact, alien abductions and so forth. And obviously, some of it is we're not denying that those people are having some form of experience, but it's not aliens. I don't know, it could be sleep paralysis or something like that, and you could be under the perception that someone is trying to kidnap you, or they kidnapped you and changed you somehow and brought you back or something like that. But there's no evidence. Now, this is important because in Islam also, as a religion, we believe it is built on evidence as well. Okay, as usual, we have mic problems. So this is another premise I want everybody to understand. In Islam, we don't just speak. We don't believe in superstition in Islam, like these folk tales. So there has to be some evidence. And the evidence, when we talk about evidence, the evidence has to come from two sources. Either it comes from the scripture. So is there anything in the scripture that says that there is some form of life outside of Earth? Or at least, is there any possibility? Does the Quran leave us with any possibility that there is some form of life outside of earth. And of course, the other type of evidence is the scientific evidence. So, in Islam, if there is a scientific proof that there is some life outside of earth, we don't deny it. If it is proven, indeed. If it is a hypothesis, we don't have to either believe it or disbelieve it. All right? So we have to establish some foundation here, and the foundation is, as a religion in Islam, we don't believe, to begin with, we don't believe there's a conflict between religion and science. And number two, we believe that evidence is crucial, that we follow evidence. And we don't just follow hearsay or some superstition or some hypothesis that has not been proven. All right. So in the Quran, I believe we have hints. So there's some hints that there are possibly some form of life outside of Earth and even outside the solar system or outside the galaxy altogether. So for example, when we read Surat Al-Fatiha, and I'm sure all of you know Surat Al-Fatiha, if you pray, and I hope all of you pray, the first thing you do is you recite Surat Al-Fatiha. And what does Surat Al-Fatiha say in the beginning? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. People debate whether Bismillah is part of Fatiha, but the beginning, if you're not Shafi'i, the very beginning of Surat Al-Fatiha is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Alright? Now right there and then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Have you read the translation of Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen? Does anyone know what Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen mean? Oh, there.
It means all praise and thanks to Allah, God of the galaxies.
Galaxies. Okay, so you translated Al-Alamin as galaxies. You don't have to impress me, and since the lesson is about, or the talk is about the universe, it's not quite right. If you want to be precise, if you want to be very accurate in your translation, you would say, praise be, Alhamdulillah. We all know Alhamdulillah means praise to Allah. Praise to God. Praise to Allah. And then it says, Rabbil Alameen, the Lord of the Alameen. So what is Al-Alameen? Well, Alameen is the plural of Alam. And Alam is, you could say, the universe. Or you could also translate Al-Alam as the world. So for example, when we talk about our earth, we could say we have the world of plants, the world of animals, right? Each one of them is a world in itself. But here you notice also the plural is alamun or alameen, right? If you wanted to, in Arabic, there are two types of plural. There's the plural that applies to people, like things that can understand and comprehend, which is usually people. We're the only people, or we're only creation that we have, cognition. We're able to think and process thoughts. So for that type of creation, or for that type, we have a type of plural, which we call Jama' Mudhakkar Salim. I'm sure none of you, or very few of you, know this. But for the other type, it's awalim. The other type of plural is for everybody, like things, plants, even animals, anything else. It would be a different type of plural. And here you notice that in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the first type of plural, which applies to things that can comprehend and think. And if it is plural, then possibly, Allahu A'lam, Allah knows best, it seems like there are other worlds that have things that can think and process thoughts and have some form of cognition. And you might think I'm talking about parallel universes and stuff like that, right? Actually, the next verse, you're going to be even more surprised. And this is actually a verse that has been talked about quite a bit. And it's been actually interpreted by some of the early companions. And it has more indications. Again, I don't think we could say that something is absolutely this way or that way. Quran, what is nice about the Quran, it leaves some room for thought, and it's kind of open-ended sometimes. And this is why we should not come and say, this verse definitely says this, or this verse definitely says that. We should be careful. I know some people get, a little excited, especially when you talk about the scientific miracles of the Quran. You want to prove the Quran is all about science and all of that. We have to be careful. All I'm saying here is, we do have some hints that there are possibly some creatures outside of Earth. Not only that they're creatures, so it's a form of life, but also possibly creatures that can think. All right. So let's see this next verse. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Allahu alladhi khalaqa sab'a samawat wa min al-ardi mithlahun. It is Allah, it is God who has created 7 heavens. And from the earth, like them. Now we're going to talk about what that means, like in what sense. Where is the similarity here? And then it says, يَتَنَزَّلُ الْأَمْرُ بَيْنَهُنْ. We don't have to recite the entire verse. It just says at the end, so that you know that Allah is capable of everything and that He has encompassed everything in His knowledge. He has encompassed everything in His knowledge. Okay. So let's think about this for a minute. It says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created 7 heavens. Even that is a bit hard to understand. Some people think or ponder, what does that mean? 7 heavens. Well, we look at the universe, we see many stars, we see many galaxies, but where are these 7 heavens? Now, in the old days, some Muslim scholars, not everybody, thought that these 7 heavens were the 7 planets in our solar system. And this is following some of the Greek astronomers like Ptolemy, who thought that these planets were all revolving around the earth. So the earth was at the center. That's how they thought. And then you have all the other planets. And back then they knew about Mercury, Venus, and then after that the moon. So the moon is counted as a planet among the 7. And the sun was counted as another planet. Okay? And then they knew about Jupiter and Saturn. They did not know about the other ones like Neptune and, Pluto. And Pluto is not even a planet anymore, right? A big debate about that. But they only knew about those. And some Muslim scholars said, well, these are the 7 spheres or the 7 planets, maybe the 7 heavens mentioned in the Quran. However, I don't believe this is true at all. As we know nowadays, the universe is far, far bigger than the solar system. In fact, our galaxy is nothing but 1 in 100 billion galaxies. And now, and this changes all the time, but the last I heard, what is the width of the universe? The one that we could see, the visible universe. They say it's about 90 billion light years. That's not kilometers, not miles. 90 billion, and that's just from the center to the side. So the entire width would be 180 billion light years. Just to give you an idea how big that is, for light to travel around the earth in 1 second, like 1 second, you say Allah, it has traveled already 8 times around the earth. Between us and the sun, which is like 93 million miles away, it takes only 8 minutes. And here we talk about light years, meaning how far the light can travel in a year. So you can imagine how big that is. It's, in fact, you cannot even wrap your head around it. It's like way too big for us to imagine. Now, I believe, and this is one of the opinion among scholars, is that all this visible universe is only part of the first heaven. Okay? So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the 7 heavens, what we could see is only the first heaven. Alright? So all the galaxies, all the stars are all in the first heaven. But in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it is Allah who created the 7 heavens, and from the earth He has created 7 as well. And again, Muslim scholars debated, like, what could that mean? Or maybe it means that we have 7 layers. In the earth, there's 7 layers. Nowadays, in geology, we know the earth has layers, maybe not 7. I mean, I don't know how many. I mean, maybe 5. I don't know. It's been a while. But this is not the most interesting or accurate interpretation. Some scholars have said the similarity here, because we know the heaven does not look like the earth, except that maybe it's a hint that the earth is round. Sorry, flat earthers. I heard now they're going to Antarctica, to the South Pole, to maybe discover the edge of the earth, or to see it maybe. So, I mean, I'm sorry, they're gonna come back and empty-handed. But some of them said, well, the similarity here between the earth and the heavens is the fact that, well, the earth is round and the heaven, meaning the stars and the planets, are round as well. So this is where the similarity is. And that's interesting. In fact, people, before they were able to travel outside of the earth, this is one of the things they used to deduce that the earth was round. Because we look around you, all the planets, all the stars are round. So why would the earth be anything else? Why would it be flat? Why would it be rectangular in shape or any other shape? If all the planets, all the bodies in the heaven are round, by deduction, most likely the earth has to be round. So they said this is the similarity here. The similarity is just like you see heavenly bodies in a round shape, likewise the earth is round. But some scholars have said this is talking about the number here. Just like we have 7 heavens, we have 7 earth, or 7 planets that look like earth. Meaning, and that's one of the interpretations, meaning that these planets could have life just like earth has life. Alright, so I hope you understand these different opinions. And the last one I want to focus on a little bit. So the last opinion says that the similarity here, just like there are 7 heavens, there are also 7 planets like Earth, or 6 planets like Earth. I mean, Earth would be the 7th. Now, maybe one thing that supports this possibility, this interpretation, is a narration from Ibn Abbas. Now, Ibn Abbas was a cousin of the Prophet. He was very close to the Prophet, and he got a lot of knowledge from the Prophet. He was considered one of the best interpreters of the Quran. Okay. And that's what he said. Again, I'm not going to go into the narration and how sound and how strong or weak. It is accepted as far as the chain of narration. Now, some scholars had a problem with the text, but maybe because at the time they did not know enough about astronomy. I don't know. But the chain of narration is good enough. So Ibn Abbas said in this narration, he said, and he's explaining what it means to have 7 earths. He said, سبع أراضين في كل أرض نبي كنبيكم وآدم كآدم ونوح كنوح وإبراهيم كإبراهيم وعيسى كعيسى. So yeah, this is not the statement of the Prophet himself, peace be upon him. It is the statement of Ibn Abbas. He said the 7 earths, in every one of them, there's a prophet like your prophet. There's an Adam like your Adam. There's a Noah, a Nuh like your Nuh. There's an Ibrahim like your Ibrahim. on earth, and there is a Jesus like your Jesus. By the way, when you talk about this, many Christians get upset because they think, well, Jesus was sent to save the people of the earth and he died for the sins, but that, if you say there's somebody else or there's some other form of life outside of earth and some other galaxy, some other planet, that kind of defeats the purpose of someone dying for the people of earth or something like that. In Islam, we don't have that problem. And Ibn Abbas, in fact, solved that problem. He said there could be many Jesuses, right? So there could be a Jesus for this earth, another one for another planet that has life, and on and on. He's a genius. But this is not it. I mean, if we examine, let's examine two more verses, right? Let's examine two more verses. And there also you see some indication that there are possibly there's a form of life, or possibly some form of life outside of earth. All right. Okay, so in this ayah, in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Listen carefully. He said, and from the signs of God, signs of Allah, the fact that He has created the heavens and earth. Okay? وَمَا بَثَّ فِيهِمَا مِنْ دَابَّةٍ. All right? And what He had put forth, batha, to let something spread and go forth. So the fact that He has put forth on those two things, He mentioned the heavens and earth, right? So He's not just talking about the earth, He's talking about the heavens and earth. And He said, and I have put forth in those two things, the heavens and earth, dabba. So what is dabba then? Don't think now of the Day of Judgment and the special dabba. Let's talk about the normal, the average, day-to-day dabba. No. Dabba is anything that crawls. So dabba is to crawl. That's a verb. Verb dabba is to crawl. Now this is important, by the way, because if you read the Quran, this word comes up quite often. I mean, it comes up often enough. So the verb is dabba, which is to crawl, right? Dabba is basically anything that crawls on earth. So obviously it's a form of life. It could refer to animals and the human being, right? Anything that crawls. So any form of life, right? But here he said that He has put forth these crawling things on earth and the heavens, right? Okay, so that's an indication, right? Now somebody might say, well, maybe He's talking about angels. What if He's talking about angels? Angels are not referred to as dabba. I mean, first of all, we know angels don't crawl; they fly usually, right? So they're not referred to as dabba. You cannot say these are the angels. There must be something else other than angels. In fact, there is a clear verse in Surat An-Nur where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about dabba. He defines dabba for us. He said, وَاللَّهُ خَلَقَ كُلَّ دَابَّةٍ مِّمَّا. And Allah created every dabba. I'm not going to translate it. Just remember dabba. Allah created every dabba from water. Later, few more minutes inshallah, and then you can ask all the questions you want. So he said He created every dabba, every crawling thing from water. And then He said, so some of these dabba, basically it says يمشي على بطنه, it walks on its stomach, meaning it really slither or crawl. So these are like the reptiles, right? ومنهم من يمشي على رجلين, and some of them walk on 2 feet. These are humans and the birds, right? I mean, when they're not flying, they're walking on 2 kangaroos. So we have some other animals that walk on 2 feet. ومنهم من يمشي على 4, and some walk on 4 feet. All right? So that tells us very clearly that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about dabba, He's talking about these things. He's not talking about angels. He's talking about things that crawl on earth and either have 2 feet or 4 feet or no feet. Okay? So it seems rather specific. And these are the different forms of life, right? Not only that, and I'll end with this verse. This verse also separates between dabba and angels. So they cannot be the same. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلِلَّهِ يَسْجُدُ مَا فِي السَّمَوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. And to Allah, to God, prostrates everything in the heavens and earth. مِن دَابَّةٍ وَالْمَلَائِكَةِ. So he says, there are 2 types of things that prostrate to God. The dabba and the angels. So in that verse, he separated the 2. He said there are 2 types of things. One is one is the dabba and the other one is the angels. So they're not the same. So there has to be something else going on there. There has to be some other creature out there. And he said it's in the heavens and the earth, not just the earth. Okay, so I'll leave it at this. I'm not going to make any absolute conclusions. I'm just going to, tell you that the Quran gives us this possibility, and it seems rather, credible that this is possible. It is interesting. I mean, and I'll end with this. When you look at the possibility of life, I mean, how do scientists even determine if there's a possibility? Because obviously, if you don't travel there, you cannot see life. So there has to be some method of determining whether a planet can even have life. So obviously, first of all, there has to be planets. I mean, there could not be life on stars. And recently, there has been some advances in science to help people determine if there is a planet or not. I mean, how do you know? If planets are too far away, you cannot see them, because they're too close to the star, and the star is too bright. So there's no way you could see it unless it comes in front of the star. And now the star becomes a bit dimmer, and this is how we determine maybe there's a planet there. Or it could affect its movement. If the planet is big enough, it could affect the movement of the star. It could cause it to jitter a little bit. And we could see that through some like spectroscopes and stuff like that. You could see the blue shift and the red shift, and that way you can tell that the star is moving a little bit, so there must be something causing that, and that is the planet around it. But that's just the beginning. Just because you have a planet doesn't mean you have life. So maybe the planet has to be like our planet. It has to be rocky. It cannot be a gas giant like Jupiter. And again, we're assuming here that life is like the life on Earth. You could say maybe there's a different form of life that does not resemble anything like the life we have here. Fair enough. I'm just saying there has to be many conditions met. So after you have a rocky planet, now it has to be, it has to have the right temperature. It cannot be too hot, it cannot be too cold. So that's what we call the Goldilocks zone. It has to be in a very specific zone, very specific distance from the star for it to have the right temperature. And then after that, it has to have the right size. If it's too big, it could have such a strong pull. The gravity could be so high that it makes walking on that planet impossible, because your weight will be so big. I mean, you're gonna have such a heavy weight if the gravity is too strong. And if it is too weak, then you're going to fly. You're not going to stick to that planet. So the point is there has to be many conditions met before you can have an actual life. But the fact that we have many, many, many stars, like you multiply, 100 billion times 100 billion, right? 100 billion galaxies in each. We have 100 billion stars. So there are many, many stars, and hence there is a possibility that some of these would have planets that would have possibly some form of life. Okay, so with that, we'll end here. And now we can ask all the questions we want to ask. And I see many hands already, so let's start from the right. So the question is, do I think there's anything out there? Again, I mean, no one can be definite. Yes, just to end it. I think there are some forms of life. Yes.
So Daba, is it like a creature on its own, or is it something?
So he's asking, is Dabba a creature on its own? What do you mean by that?
So I mean, does it come from does it look like any other type of creature, or
It doesn't have to be. So that's a good question. For example, this Dabba, does it have to look like an animal on earth? Not necessarily. I think it just, so it doesn't have to be very, you don't have to take it very, very literally. Because even when it says here, Dabba, we talked about things that walk. So it's not necessarily crawling as we take it, right? It just means something that moves, something that has life in it. It does not have to be like our life. It does not have to be like the animal life we have on earth. But no doubt, movement is a sign of life. And the fact that there are things that move and crawl and walk, it's a sign of life. But how are they specifically, we don't know.
I have answered this already, so I just want to make sure I understand it. I don't know if it might be part of the lid. If there was other life, I don't know if you know this. You might have already answered it, but what's it called? Would in Umm al-Qiyamah or Jannah or Jahannam, something like that. Would we have to interact with them?
So the question is, if there was any life outside of Earth, would we ever meet them? Like say on the Day of Judgment and so forth. Well, a couple of things. First of all, if these creatures do not have the capability of thinking, then they're not responsible, and hence there may not be any reckoning for them. Like even the animals on earth on the Day of Judgment, they don't go through reckoning like we do. Yes, there is some form of justice, right? Like if there was an animal that killed another animal unjustly, there is some justice done. But then they'll be turned into dirt, so there is no paradise or hellfire for them. But the other thing that I want to respond, let's say there is an there's an intelligent life outside of Earth. Are we going to meet them? So that's interesting, because one of the verses I mentioned, I did not complete the recitation of it. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا بَثَّ فِيهِمَا مِنْ دَابَّةٍ وَهُوَ عَلَى جَمْعِهِمْ إِذَا يَشَاءُ قَدِيرٌ. So that kind of answers your question right on. It says, and from his signs is the creation of heavens and earth, and we had what he had put forth from Dabba. And then he said, and if he wanted to gather them together, على جمعهم, he would do so. وهو على جمعهم إذا يشاء قدير. If he wanted to gather all of them, could be hinting to a Day of Judgment, then he is able to do that. So, okay.
As we know, for example, according to Qiyamah, there's a lot of things that can happen on this earth, like Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Dajjal, stuff like that. Does that show the inability of humanity to start civilization on another planet?
Okay, I don't know if I get it. So you said from the signs of the Day of Judgment, is that we're going to have these Ya'juj and Ma'juj and the other signs. Does that indicate that we're not able to take care of our own civilization?
No,
Is that
we'll
what
be
you-
able to like go and like start.
Oh, we'll be able to go travel some other
like
places.
start civilizations on other planets.
Start civilization on other planets.
Everything's happening on this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of talks about maybe going to Mars or some other planet. And some other astrophysicists or astronomers would say to fix our planet is much easier, because the context of this is like, oh, we're destroying our planet, so we should look for somewhere else to go. And some other like scientists would say, well, it's much easier to fix your problems on Earth. I mean, it's much, much harder to go find, a place you can inhabit.
So if there were other life forms that could think on a different planet far away, would they have a day of judgment?
It seems like they would. And the two indications, one I just told Yaman. So in the Quran it hints that God could gather them, meaning resurrection. But the other one is, if you remember the narration from Ibn Abbas when he said, and they have a prophet like you have a prophet. So that could also indicate that they are responsible. Allah knows best. Okay, let's move on, because and we'll come back to you, inshallah. Any other questions? We're going this way. Okay, Ammar, go.
About the seven heavens thing. So isn't there like the whole thing of the prophet, peace be upon him, like moves to the seven heavens, like where he has some kind of nightly journey and he moves to the seven heavens and
Correct.
And he talks to some of the prophets and that kind of stuff. Like, doesn't that kind of indicate that the seven heavens aren't physical, that they're more metaphysical? Because again, when he reaches the end, he needs God. I mean, are you saying that if I get in a spaceship and I go past the seven heavens, I'll see God? It seems like it's a
Okay.
metaphysical kind of
All right, let's take it one piece at a time. So Brother Ammar says, but in the night journey, we know Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, went through the seven heavens. So those heavens must be metaphysical or beyond physical, and not actual seven physical heavens. Otherwise, would we meet God after that? Because Prophet Muhammad spoke to Allah after he went through the seven heavens. I think this could be answered in different ways. One, I would say, like I said earlier, I believe all we could see is only the first heaven. So I'm saying it's not even possible for humans or anyone else to go beyond the first heaven. It's not even possible. And there's an ayah that indicates that. And some say it's talking about the day of judgment. Some say it's talking about this life. يا معشر الجن والإنس إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان. I'm sure you all got that, right? It's like a challenge. It says, oh, humans and jinn, if you're able to go beyond, or to تنفذوا is like to penetrate even this layer of heavens and earth, then go ahead and do so. You're not going to be able to do that. So if the visible universe is only the first heaven, it's not possible that we can do that physically. Let alone the fact that we can't even travel. I mean, even if you can travel the speed of light, and according to the physics we know today, it's not even possible for any object to travel faster than the speed of light, let alone human beings. We can't do that, obviously. Even if you can do that, you can imagine how far you have to go. So that's not humanly possible. When it comes to the journey, though, the night journey, it is metaphysical in the sense that it was a miracle. So the very definition of a miracle is that it defies the laws of nature. It defies the laws of physics. So obviously this happened not through the laws of physics. It happened because we believe God made it happen. So it transcends the laws of physics. If we want to call that metaphysics, fine. I don't care. I mean, if that's how you want to define it, that's fine. Anything on this side before we go to that side? We have two. Talal, sorry. Go ahead first.
I have a question. So, when you were saying in the Quran it was possible to go to the first heaven?
No, actually the challenge is if you claim you could get out of the heaven, you cannot do that. So you cannot. Even the first heaven, you cannot go through it. And obviously now we know the universe as we see it. I don't know if you were here, but we mentioned that it's like 90 billion light years from the center to one side. So you could imagine how wide that is. It's not remotely feasible that anyone can do that. We can't even travel outside of the solar system. Come on. Except if you send a ship without a human on it. And even then, I don't know if I think they sent something, I don't know if it's now beyond the solar system. And this is just a small little, we can do that, yes, but I'm saying the ones we sent, I don't think we've gone beyond the solar system yet. Or maybe it just now has.
I actually watched a video on YouTube, and it was like, the first person to ever go to space, like the Russian guy, it was actually a conspiracy theory, by the way, believed that he was the first successful person, and that there was a radio transmission that the U.S. caught onto of a spaceship transmitting to the U.S. going beyond the solar system. It was like a failed mission, and the person inside of it was like trying to transmit it back to the Earth.
So it was an actual human being?
Yeah, so they just died somewhere in space because they were failed.
Oh, too bad, yeah. Okay, let's go to Talal and then we'll go back to you.
Okay, I have a question. It kind of was what he said. He said, like, do other of the universes have Day of Judgment too? Alright, so if they do you think that it will be the same day as us? Or do you... Same idea. Like, or do you think, like, they're
separate? Again, like, we cannot say for certain, but like I said, first of all, let me clarify. I mean, there could be two possibilities. Either in the same universe, we could have different planets with life, or like you kind of said, different universes. We didn't go that far. I mean, now there's a theory of the multiverses and stuff. So let's not go that far. But even if in the same universe there were different planets with life, would they be resurrected together? All I said was there's one verse in the Quran that kind of hints to that. And the verse is وَهُوَ عَلَى جَمْعِهِمْ إِذَا يَشَاءُ قَدِيرٌ, that if he wanted, he didn't say he will, he said if he wanted to gather all of them, like all of these life forms on different planets, he said he would do so. So it's not necessarily that everybody will be resurrected on the same, because from all the other evidence we know that this earth will be the platform or the theater of the resurrection. So obviously it applies to the people on earth. It doesn't apply to life forms on other planets. Yes?
You said that all fallen people on earth are made of water. But didn't they say that we're made of clay?
Okay, so this is a good question. I said, or the verse said, that everything came from water, but also we have other verses that says from clay. There are different ways to reconcile. Did you guys get the question? Okay. First, we could say that our bodies are made of water. Like the vast majority of the body is made of water. I don't know the percentage, which is 60, 70%? 70% or so. So it could be referring to the fact that we are made of water. Meaning that a big part of our bodies is made of water. There's another thing, I'm not going to mention it here because some of you are young, but water could refer to something else, not actual water. And the third one is that, and this could refer to evolution. I know some people might have a problem with that, but we know all the life that existed on earth came from the sea. So it could be referring to the fact that these crawlers came from the sea.